Sup guys, we're back again, and we're just gonna go in part two and just talk a little bit more about deck building and deck theory in general. So we were talking again, Brian, and you were also saying a lot also has to do with when people are making decks to ask why and question why they're putting so and so card, or why X player who won with a certain deck played certain cards. Now, for example, same Broly won Gen Con, but his was one that probably no one expected, which had allies in it. So, if I came to you, a couple of days ago and was like, hey, check out my same Broly deck with allies in it, or anyone else, they might think, oh, you're crazy, it's never going to work because, it doesn't have synergy. What happens if you go against the mirror and it's dead and blah, 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 and things like that. But, you can see, look what won, a same Broly deck with allies, despite running Spin Kick and Mike fitting away or destroying your own allies, Tyler still played it, and again, for him it worked because he saw like, okay, Nappa's really good, I can search it out, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and it worked for him. But for other people, I bet they wouldn't have even even if they thought of it, probably wouldn't execute it, because they probably might have felt like by other peers or other people saying like, oh, it's not good right now, or so and so. So
well, exactly, and that's one of those plays that I think goes back perfectly to what we talked about as a personal player preference. That's I'd say that's a mid-risk, mid-reward kind of deck, because like you said, you are running the risk of going against other Saiyan Broly's who are going to make you lose stages, or you're going against, the possibility of going against a Saiyan Minister with Raditz. And like you said, with Spin Kick destroying your own allies. But then on the flip side, his play style and the way the deck was built was towards more of an aggro type of meta, in which, because I actually went up against in Texas, I was running my Red with his Turtles. I went up against two Saiyan Brolys. One who was just the classic Hamana Unleashed and just try to beat your face in, and the other one was the allies. The guy who had no allies, I had no trouble with, because I could take his attacks and take some damage and have no problem. Mm-hmm. When I went up against the same Broly, he brought out Nappa. He had Nappa, Vegeta, and Turtles on the field, and I was Turtles. Mm. So
yeah,
and he was level 2, so he was doing plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stages. Every one of his, it was just and I couldn't gain the advantage, because the one turn I wanted a relaxation or VTP, his Nappa shut me down hard, mm-hmm. and to me, plus Saiyan's got so many access to good ally cards. Mm-hmm. They have ally tutoring cards that are Saiyan styled. Yeah. So you no longer have to worry about going, well, I'm running a non-styled card in a deck that wants to run styled cards.
Exactly.
So, and I think you make a perfect example of that. I think people back in the day before Pt.2 ran Tag Team Gohan, people would have been like, what? That's...
surprise attack, that card sucks.
Yeah, that card sucks. It's not as good as people think. And then when we went to Texas, the funny thing was, the meta reflected that. Everyone was playing Android 13 and Broly. And then you saw your kind of classic, Krillin players, the old school stuff. But, and I think, and actually something I want to talk to you a little about, because you had mentioned before, is you made a good point the other day about talking about players who really only play the old stuff and really are set in this old mentality of how a deck is ran. Just talk a little bit about, kind of the idea that we had that some people don't really expand outside of the deck theory, and they really just stick in one way of thinking, and how that's kind of, do you think that's detrimental, or what do you think?
Again, if it works for them and they can top events, because if winning's the only thing on their mind, or, because they want to win, which everyone wants to do, then, for them, go for it. But I think, playing other play styles, and even if, to kind of get out of your comfort zone, I don't mean to go to a regional with, X deck that might just be, blatantly, bad, because there are certain cards that, just better than others, which is... that's how card games are. There's certain MPs that are just better than others. So this is not something where people should feel when I mean innovative decks or things like that, to run a deck that's not good. You still want to better your chances to win an event, or at least top cut as much as possible. So don't go to an event with maybe I don't know, something 16 or 19, or an MP that might be really bad right now. But at the same time, I think if players can really expand out and really explore different styles and see why, if it didn't work, why it didn't work, or question, what can I do better, or what can I change, and stuff like that. Because I feel if they go back to something comfortable, which is fine, it's just wall up, barrier, this is what works for me because I can't get anything to work right. And instead of questioning why and, asking themselves why they just, I'm not even going to try and bother. I'm just going to go stick with what works.
I think people that's a good point, man. I think people give up way too easily.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a guy locally here who was running we had a tournament just this last weekend and was running that budget Piccolo Red Enraged that we've kind of seen kind of spotty around on some of the regionals and went undefeated. I mean, just Rex base went undefeated. Well, I played him in a casual game with my Red Enraged 13. I won the first one. Now, the second game, I won literally because I had first action and I just angered out. And I think he was one anger away. It's just like super close. But he got I think so defeated about it because I think when you see a deck like that and that's a winning deck or it's a good deck and it gets beat, it's almost like, well, something's wrong with this deck. Sometimes just, and sometimes it's like, well, is it a player mistake? Sometimes it's just not, sometimes you can make no mistakes and it's just not your game to win.
Yeah, you can't win every game. It's statistically impossible, so you have to accept the losses as they are.
And it doesn't mean you're bad. I mean, Ryan was posting about his experience with his blue protective cooler, and he had a matchup and went against Pt.2, and it just, as far as how things drew out and him getting menaces and everything, it just, it didn't pan out for him. His deck was amazing and he did really well, but you can see his attitude is a lot different. Like he's still thinking positively about it, but he's also looking at his deck like, what changes can I make? What can I add and change up? And I think anytime you look at a top deck list, I think this is really important too. I talked to Tim a little bit after Texas, and I said, hey, what would you change? What would you differently? And he was going to change 5 to 6 cards. Take some out, put some in. And I think it's the other thing. Don't just look at the deck list. If you can, talk to the person and be like, okay, what did you change from regionals? If you could, after your regional experience, what would you change? Because I think people don't understand your deck list before and after regionals. It definitely changes. It definitely changes you after experience.
And you mentioned last night when we were talking, a lot of it has to do with the pilot. So the fact that I admire Tim as a player, and a lot of people do, for the fact, and I admire him because, you see him with different styles topping, Blue Gohan, Raditz, Saiyan Raditz, Orange Goku, all these different styles, all these different MPs. That shows for me a high caliber all around player because of the deck theory that he uses for each different style and what his end game is. Because again, he theorizes and decides, I'm going to try this card out. And then even so, like you said, after Texas, he still wanted some cards to change. So he still didn't have it all figured out. But at least going into it, he had some idea of what it might be. And I would suggest everyone to at least try that. Take that first step and be like, okay, I'm going to at least try and see what works, what doesn't work, and why it doesn't work. And I think the why is so important. But people just kind of default and say, okay, my so-and-so built a deck for me, so I'm just going to take it, and then that's it.
Yeah, it just makes it. You make a perfect point, man. I mean, that the pilot makes a big difference on the deck, and that's where you look at a deck and how it's built, and I think people too many times see their losses in such a negative light when they're building deck, when they need to get back to kind of like you said, a solid theory crafting, and thinking of the game critically, because. I think Dragon Ball Z is unique in a lot of ways to where, you and I even brought up the point, when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Vanguard, the top decks in those formats, I mean, it's pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
Back in the day when you're playing Shadalls or Gravekeepers in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Gold Paladins, Kaguro, an Overlord deck, besides 1 to 2 card tech difference, the deck was just locked in.
Yeah.
This is how you ran the deck. And I think the great thing about Dragon Ball Z is it shifts from that paradigm where you can, we have such an expansive card pool. We don't have the really hard ban list that Yu-Gi-Oh has, where every set gets released and there's a new ban list. And I think people really need to take advantage of that because I don't think people appreciate how rare of an opportunity that is in a card game to be able to have access to such a card pool and not be locked in.
Yeah.
To one way of running it.
Yeah, and I encourage a lot of players, and I'm guilty of myself for this, where I would question a card and be like, should I play this card in my deck? Should I not? And then I go back and forth, and I'm worrying about this card to see if it will work. And I'm just thinking to myself, why don't I just try it? Why don't I just put the card in and see what happens? What's the worst that's gonna happen? Trump's gonna become president or something? But
don't run the card.
Yeah, But it's things like that where players are, I feel, so afraid to just step out and even just try a card. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. To take it out. That's the worst that's going to happen. Then you at least gain something, gain some knowledge, and you see. But all the cards that you put in your deck, you might put in one card, take it out because for some reason it doesn't work. Put in another card and see that the card that you took out might actually be good now because you added a different card in. So the dynamic of your deck constantly is changing, and there's no reason for people to kind of be afraid if they are just to try out a card. I mean, that's why you're prepping for a big event, and this is the time to prep where you try out cards. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to lose a local.
Yeah, fail. Like, dude, that's perfect, man. Fail. Like, continue to fail time after time and try out new things. Because, you're right. What's the worst going to happen? You're playing locally and you lose. And dude, like, I think it's probably one of the best takeaways from this. Like, I think people are so obsessed with winning that losing almost doesn't. I mean, losing has its own rewards.
Yeah.
When I lose a game, I always critically think, like, even wins and losses, I critically think, like, okay, what can I change in my deck? Would I rather have this? The other week I was in a tournament in Lawrence, and I got second, and my loss was to a lot of, like, I was the Blue Gohan deck, and I realized I needed Red Knee Lift. Like, the auto crit was, like, super important. Then I put in another Sagacious Strike, because I was looking at how the meta was developing, and my loss made my deck a lot better, so now that I play in tournaments, it
exactly
much, much better, and I appreciate that loss, because had I never had that, I could have very well gone to a regional thinking,
your deck's fine and everything's good.
Exactly. On the flip side too, you're talking about trying out new cards. I got a friend of mine locally with all, like, because we kind of talked about all, like, there's so many decks that search for cards, and Android search for cards, and Cooler search for cards. He teched in 2 black taunts into his black deck because he was running a mill deck. And oh my god, like, the number of times people like BTP get this perfect card, and he's like, cool. Like, they'd always get, like, times, like, cool black taunt.
Yeah.
Like, well, now you mill, and now you shuffle, and now you redraw your cards. And, I mean, that's a card that can be random, but in the right spot, in the right meta, it can work. And so it was just funny to see him, like, experimenting, and it was a really freeing experience. So, man, I agree. Definitely experiment.
And I guess we'll just end on that note pretty much. And again, just to recap, Brian and I, just encourage you guys to just try out things. If someone, like, has a deck, and they theory crafted and built it, take it as it is, and then, experiment and see what works for yourself, and then if not, you can always just revert back to what was originally there, but it doesn't hurt to really just experiment and try. I mean, that's why we have the card pool, that's why we have different cards. Otherwise, there would be no fun in playing the game if players don't really step out. And again, it's not for someone who, like, plays, let's say, a meta deck, because I'm not bashing anyone that, plays a certain deck, because if they like the deck, then by all means play it, but question yourself of why you're playing it and why you're playing the cards, and that's all I pretty much ask. It's just for players to just kind of do that more. If Android 13 is, like, the top deck right now, for example, and or whatever deck, and people are playing it, go ahead and play it, but if you want to try and experiment and see, okay, maybe I might tech this card in. Like, some people run Android Palm Shard or Palm Burst or whatever, like, as a one-of tech copy. Some people don't. Again, it's just trying things out, and that's all you can really do.
So, I agree, man. Well said, dude. Well said.
Yeah, so this is Mr. Waffle signing out with Manabeast. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the little talk and chat that we had, and I'll hopefully see you guys around the circuit. Are you planning to go to any regionals anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm definitely already scheduled to go to Kentucky. I plan to go to Colorado, and then I plan to go to KC. So I got 3 regionals coming up here that I'm planning to go to Kentucky.
Nice.
Just come on up there. We'll hang out and chill.
Yeah. So best of luck, man, for sure. And, hopefully we'll see you guys around soon. So this is Mr. Waffle signing out. Peace.